Do you like your life? If you're watching this video, you probably have a lot more reasons to like your life than you may imagine. But there may be genuine bad news ahead, especially if you're young. And no, the fact that you may not afford a house of your own is the least bad news you may hear. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Alright, this is a thing that I thought about quite a lot lately, and I still haven't developed a full and cogent thought about it, but let me lay out the facts and then maybe we'll reach something together. So basically, the working hypothesis is that the current civilization that we enjoy in Europe and North America, and other places such as South Korea, Japan, Australia, but let's stick to the northwestern quarter of the globe. So, the current civilized conditions that we enjoy in this part of the world are basically a thin layer between full-blown barbarism and, well, us. I don't think that's controversial to say. It's a no-brainer that civilization is basically a shift from man's state of nature. Now that's great, but the problem is that this civilization may be a lot more fragile than many dare to think. Now let me explain why I think that. In this age of alleged knowledge-based economy, fewer and fewer people actually do possess the relevant knowledge for the progress or at least the preservation of that said economy. Now seriously, how many people know how electricity is being generated? How many people know how to survive a week without electricity? Not to mention a year, not to mention 10 years. How many people know how to procure food if left to their own devices without electricity and money? And how many people do even know what to do with the raw food? I mean, it's funny to poke fun at studies showing that one third of students, that would be young adults, can't even boil an egg, but it's really a sinister joke. Now, I love dark humor, but I'd rather be at the expense of more manageable things. Because if I'm right, the current situation is not manageable at all. And it might turn nasty, which is why I really hope I'm wrong. Here's some more questions. How many people know how to fix a car? How many people know how to adapt devices? And by that I mean taking electricity from one device and use it to power other device. Such knowledge can actually make the difference between catastrophe and mild sadness. You see, with the exception of some areas of the American South and some areas of Eastern Europe, the overwhelming majority of people in both Europe and North America stand no chance of surviving in case the power goes down. And I don't mean short power outages of a few hours. I mean the power really going down, let's say for several weeks. And not just in one area. Think of a power blackout on a continent basis. Now if you think that can't happen, you might be a bit overconfident. Now, I really hope it never happens, but, never say never. The fact of the matter is that a significant portion of the populace, perhaps even an overwhelming majority, doesn't even have the most basic ideas on how this civilization is being kept afloat, let alone have any idea on how to maintain it or on how to survive when civilization may take a short break. And the more I speak with other people, the less confident I am in the possibility of this civilization surviving. Again, I genuinely hope I'm wrong. I really want to be wrong on this. But can someone please explain to me how will a socialist civilization survive when most people aren't even aware that electricity can indeed stop? You see, the reason I mentioned some areas of the American South and some areas of Eastern Europe as exceptions to the rule is because these two areas still retain a relatively strong contingent of individuals who have genuine grit, of individuals who know exactly what to do when the power goes down, or when they learn that the truck that brings the food will not arrive for the next 10 days, they know what to do. And more importantly, these areas still do teach their children basic skills. Now sure, it's somewhat illegal to do that in the United States, but the Southerners, to their credit, don't give a shit. Which is great. They shouldn't. What I'm trying to say here is that a huge portion of the populace has become too detached from the actual reality of this planet. Now, for as long as the lights are on, that's not really an issue. You don't have to know how to cook as long as you can afford to pay others to cook for you from your salary of, let's say, medieval history researcher. But when this segment of medieval history researchers is too big, this will eventually pose a huge problem. And mind you, I don't have anything against medieval history researchers, but it's a good example of a profession that exists solely because millions upon millions of invisible men are working tirelessly to keep the civilization so comfortable that it can afford to pay medieval history researchers huge amounts of wealth that were unimaginable even to the kings of the medieval period. And notice that I said men and not people, and that was not me trying to go older English on you. I actually mean men, human males. You know, Andrea Hardy, whom I had on this channel a while ago, wrote an article several years ago called Pray Men Never Take a Day Off, which I do suggest you read it. Links are, of course, in the below bar. Now, without the men that keep the electricity running, that keep digging the oil out of the ground, and that keep delivering the food to fill the supermarkets, and that keep maintaining the infrastructure that allows you, amongst other things, to watch this video, a significant chunk of the European and North American populace would simply die. And it would die quite rapidly, no more than a week. How much do you think a trigger warning demanding student at DePaul University would be able to survive without a credit card and electricity? Serious question. And I chose this example because these aggressive schmucks are in their physical prime, or at least they should be. So in theory, they would have the highest chances of survival in case of a sudden shift to a state of nature. Yet they won't, or they wouldn't. Because a significant chunk of adults today are raised not only with the wrong mentality, but also in the wrong environments. Heck, some jurisdictions even have a special name for what used to be called normal upbringing a generation ago. Free-range parenting. Yet this civilization elevates exactly the types of personalities that would otherwise be useless. I mean, when was the last time you heard someone speaking nice to or about a truck driver? Or about an electrician? It's hard to remember, isn't it? When was the last time you saw or heard about a judge going more leniently or at least acknowledging the individual usefulness of an electrician or an oilman in a bitter divorce case? That's also hard to remember, isn't it? Now, all of these may sound disparate, and well, they kinda are, but I'll try to unite them in a few moments. I promise this will make sense. Or at least some sense. Meanwhile, another question. When was the last time you saw an urban mother being proud of her son's accomplishments in mechanics? Or an urban mother being proud of her son's accomplishments in a voluntary project that teaches them how to build things? I know it's been years since I have heard that. The mothers of such great boys and young men that I meet are usually disgusted that their son didn't go to some bollocks college to learn some ideologically driven crap and generate a shiny but otherwise useless diploma. It doesn't matter that her son makes in a month more than she makes in 2 years. The fact that he didn't follow the script and immersed himself into something that is useful but not prestigious is cause for concern and sometimes even shame. And this is where I wanted to reach, actually. This script is simply messed up, and messed up by quite a wide margin. We basically glorify mindless drones whose usefulness is somewhere between debatable and non-existent. While at the same time, and this is the worst part, while at the same time we're shunning and even bashing those thanks to whom we can afford to glorify the aforementioned drones to begin with. In doing so, we basically alienate ourselves from the basics of civilization, and from there, it's only one tiny step till the end of the road, which is either a war or a brutal collapse. Now, I do realize that this sounds too apocalyptic, and maybe I am phrasing things a little bit more grim than I should, but think about it this way. Which are the civilizations that want to continue to keep existing? Is it the Swedish civilization? Or maybe the German civilization? Not so much. In fact, the Swedish elites have serious troubles when they have to at least pretend that there is a reason for Sweden to continue to exist. And you know what happens when a civilization no longer finds any reason to continue to exist? Well, it basically gets its wish fulfilled. Now let's compare that to other civilizations, such as the Vietnamese civilization. Vietnam is a 91 million country with a rapidly growing economy and with a strong cultural revival movement. 95% or more of the populace fundamentally understands that capitalism and liberty are mandatory for their prosperity. Meanwhile, only 60% of the Germans think that, and it shows. In Vietnam, it goes without saying that the country needs a secure border. Nobody thinks that's racist or somehow bad, which is why they invest in weapons and military alliances to make sure that Vietnam will continue to exist and not become again a province of a larger communist empire. Not so much in Germany, or Sweden for that matter, which went from the fourth military power of the planet in the 70s to being the 30th, beneath Greece, Vietnam, and even Canada. You know, little pacifist Canada? They actually still rank quite high in firepower and defense. Basically, this civilization has become a safe space, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, but a safe space that is safe from everything, including basic reality, will eventually tend to breed weakness. It's one thing to have a safe space like Japan, you know, prosperous, homogeneous, culturally rich, seventh military power in the world, and ready to stand up for itself. And it's a whole different story to have a safe space like Belgium, relatively prosperous but otherwise culturally non-existent, completely non-homogeneous, and the 65th military power, way beneath Yemen, Hungary, Angola, Bangladesh, Belarus, or even Myanmar. All of these are significantly poorer than Belgium, but all of these will still exist 100 years from now. Belgium, it would be a miracle if it will still exist by the end of my lifetime. Civilizations that want to continue to exist tend to discuss about securing their borders, translating knowledge into their own languages, creating new knowledge, and trade goods and services with other peoples, but not trade peoples themselves. Civilizations that don't really care if they continue to exist tend to discuss bathrooms for transgenders, subverting their own languages, creating meaningless buzz, and bring in more and more culturally incompatible peoples. Now, with that knowledge in mind, look again at Europe and try to tell me with a straight face that there will still be a Belgian Belgium in 2100, or a Swedish Sweden, or a British United Kingdom. Meanwhile, I will look at you and tell you with a straight face that there will still be a Hungarian Hungary in 2100, and a Polish Poland, and a Belarusian Belarus. The point that I'm trying to make here is that those who've been through hell know it in their DNA that they should try to avoid that happening again. This is the case of the American South and most of the former Eastern Bloc. This is, however, not the case with most of the former Western Bloc. With all due respect for the Western European victims of World War II, the recent history of Western Europe has been predominantly peaceful, and once the World War II generation died, there was no one around left to keep everyone alert that peace and civilization are the exception and not the rule. And that is not good news. So, are there any good news? Well, no. Not to my knowledge anyway. Which is why I'm making this video as an invitation to the subscribers to prove me wrong. I want to be proven wrong. I want to be wrong on this, but I'm afraid I'm not wrong. When I tell my immediate friends that I know legit real-life people who genuinely believe that it's inhumane to kill my own chicken and eat it, but it's perfectly okay to buy it from the supermarket, they think I'm joking. And let's face it, it is legitimately funny. But it is nonetheless true that a higher and higher proportion of the population of Europe and North America has simply lost touch with reality almost completely. And again, As long as the power grid keeps on running and as long as there is a strong military to protect that thin layer of civilization, this thing can go on for a very, very long period of time. But that's the thing. With trivial exceptions, again, most of them in Eastern Europe and the US South, the power grid is in danger thanks to politicians squandering funds on fantasy nonsense, such as wind turbines or subsidies for transgender disabled black students, and the military is getting weaker. Again, with the laudable and commendable exceptions of the American South and certain parts of Eastern Europe. Also, the script is getting worse. The next generation of men that are supposed to at least keep the civilization going, let alone contribute to its further advancement, is being treated like crap since the age of 6 or 7, when instead of being taught basic calculus and real-life skills, they're being taught about masturbation and toxic masculinity in kindergartens. It's easy to dismiss such concerns when the power grid is running. Not so easy when the barbarians are in the center of the capital city and the power is out, possibly for good, since the smart men have long decided that it's no longer worth it. Again, maybe I'm wrong, and I really want to be wrong, so you tell me. That's all I had to say. Gosh, I think I just made the most depressing video ever. Oh well, c'est la vie.